Each detail of the 5S is meticulously designed, engineered, and crafted in a way that no iPhone has been before.
No two fingerprints are alike, so we thought with 5S, why not use them as passwords?
And the 5S is the first iPhone to be offered in the color gold. To achieve this aesthetic, we went outside of our core team of designers.
Yeah, gold is best. You think gold, you think all the best stuff. Jet ski, nice watch, sports car, shrimp. It's not regular iPhone, it's gold.
I just want to make it clear, I only worked on the gray and silver ones, okay?
Display is best, A7 chip is best cheap, camera is best.
Regardless of the exterior colors, all the phones are equally as powerful on the inside.
No, come on. Gold is best. Gold is best. Gold is best. Boom, boom. This guy. Listen, Siri is not such an uptight bitch on this one. She good. She real good.
We didn't really talk to the gold team that much as we were in Cupertino and their offices were based in Miami Beach.
You know, you're on the deck of a boat and there's a hot lady on this arm, a hot lady on that arm, champagne, cocktail, dance beats going good. DJ says, hey, Rafi, only the hottest tracks for you. And you're like, buddy, you're the best. Gold is best. Best.
Gold is best. One of my favorite ads from Conan O'Brien. That was the first gold iPhone. Oh my gosh, I love that. Gold is best. Only the best tracks for you, Rafi. Folks, welcome back to the Pulse. My name is Matt. This is Crypto Heartbeat. It is 10:33 Central Texas time, and we're talking about real-world assets on the blockchain. What would the impact be if we brought real-world assets into the Pulse chain? Folks, it's happening everywhere else. Why aren't we talking about it? And that's what I want to talk about today. I hope you are doing really well. I want to share with you something as we get into this really quickly, and that is what's happening here tomorrow. This is some news in the world of real-world asset tokenization, and I want you to pay attention to this guy. There's a guy. He is the CEO. His name is Carlos Domingo. Carlos Domingo, he was just at Consensus here about 4 days ago. And Carlos is going to be testifying, they say on the 31st, but it's actually on the 5th, tomorrow, in front of the Senate. This is the House Financial Financial Services Digital Asset Subcommittee will hold a hearing on real-world assets tokenization on June 5th to discuss the emerging sector's potential benefits. Folks, how does a private company like Securitize get the ability to speak about real-world assets and tokenization to Congress? Well, it's when your investor named BlackRock led a $47 million round of funding for Securitize. Folks, it's important for us. You know, we are in this ecosystem and we are building the alternative financial system. All right. I've been saying that a lot. I continue to say that. I think we need to embrace that. You know, we can't just embrace number go up. The future of crypto and the blockchain is ultimately it's going to be tied to real world assets. Right now, it's the digital casino. The two things that people bring up to me all the time that are not in crypto. So these are people with money who are, you know, your traditional retail investor. And what do they say? The two biggest problems that exist. What's it backed by? And how do I get out after I get in? Those are the two biggest issues that people have. And here's this guy, getting into Congress this is basically the playbook of FTX, right? Get in with the regulators and make the case for your company. So why are real world assets such a big deal? And why is BlackRock investing in Securitize to do this? Well, they're starting at the very, very top and they're tokenizing financial products. And of course, what is an ETF if not a tokenized financial product? In a way, if you think about it, it's basically abstracting it into kind of the retail trading crypto-like stocks, right? Those are the ETFs. But what BlackRock has made it very clear, and your buddy and mine, Larry Fink, is that everything is going to be tokenized. And why would they do that? So the number one reason they would do that is efficiency, right? The efficiency is they get access to the public ledger, and it creates what the guys in Consensus and the CEO of Securitize called crypto speed. And if you think about it, there's a lot of restrictions or limitations to basically do transactions. But what they're trying to do is tokenize these real world assets, tokenize these financial products, and then give you a token, right? So you want to buy into this, they give you a token that represents this value. And if you want to go to cash, it's as easy as a swap. That's it. And folks, there's a number of reasons that you need to understand what's going on. Number one is the fact that this is happening. This is a big shift for BlackRock to go towards the public ledger. But what are they trying to gain? The same things we are. You literally can swap it for USDC and you can get to fiat. Well, the future is coming where you don't need to get to fiat because everything is going to be digital, right? You're literally, in very, very simple way in the future, are going to be able to basically pay for anything with anything. And so that payment layer, as it basically merges. But here's the problem. Just like with farmland and just like with residential homes, who's buying all of them? Well, the World Economic Forum made it really clear to us. They said, you will own nothing and be happy. Have you paid attention to rents recently? One, interest rates are so high. There's not much inventory on the market. Why? Because the corporate players are buying up all the assets, right? And then they're leasing those. Well, rents are going through the roof. So inventory's down, interest rates are high. And so what are they doing? They're buying all of these assets. And so ultimately, these assets are basically going to be owned by folks. You will not own them, and you will rent from them, and they get the cash flow, and you get to be happy. Hey, you get to be happy. Isn't that nice? So let's talk about this. Why should we care? Well, when I listen to Richard Hart, when I understand what's happening with the Pulsechain, and I'm not talking about price today, I'm talking about this infrastructure that's being built. There's so many smart people building all kinds of different things on the Pulsechain. This is essentially the very beginning of the infrastructure of the alternative financial system. And I can't say it. If you've been paying attention to this channel, you know this is what I talk about a lot. We're building an alternative financial system. Well, how do you do that? You have to have a layer one that is properly decentralized. What do I mean by that? It's not just one box sitting up at AWS or Azure. It's not in some hosted environment. It's literally all across the world in all of these nodes in all of these places, underneath somebody's desk to somebody's house to, private data centers across all jurisdictions. I believe that the Pulsechain, with its validators and everything, is properly decentralized. It's not like the US government could say, oh, let's take down AWS, right? Or your box at AWS and it's gone, right? This isn't Solana. And so if you think about what we're building here, okay, we've got this proper infrastructure, this core infrastructure, which is, separate, right? Well, look at what Elon Musk is doing. He just announced that the cellular service, and it's more the data service from satellites, is competing with terrestrial cell service. Well, I really like the fact that the guy who is defending free speech, whether you're a big fan of Elon Musk or not, also has internet connectivity that is potentially going to be influenced by the same ethos. So when people want to say, no, you can't do that, you can't do these transactions, well, you have to have internet connectivity to do that. Well, I'm hoping that, and this is what I talk about on Fridays, we animate tools with a certain nature and character, right? So what is Elon Musk doing? He's animating this tool of Twitter, now called X, in a certain nature and character. And what is that? It's his ethos. What's that ethos? Well, I think that truth is more important, or people's ability to have open dialogue in a public square. Well, what does the centralized powers want? They want control and say, you can't talk about that. You can't ask those questions. And so we have someone who's defending, at least right now, a semblance of free speech on Twitter. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff there that never would have been allowed previously under previous ownership. Well, now the infrastructure of internet communication is essentially decentralized in satellites with SpaceX, and they push up the Starlink stuff. So, okay, what does the future look like if we said the vision for this Pulsechain community, the vision of Richard Hart, is to build an alternative financial system? Well, that alternative financial system would have a layer 1 that would be properly decentralized. It would have all of the tools that are needed, which are being built by all kinds of builders in the Pulsechain. It would have its own stable coin that is essentially algorithmic and backed. Well, PDAI might end up being that because the maker contract was altered at the beginning. Folks, if you look at this besides just, is my meme coin going up? And I feel like so many of the degenerate folks, and God bless them, are so focused on making a buck. I can't help but think, do we realize that what we're doing is just, we're shuffling money and stealing from each other? Hey, look at my number go up strategy. There's a fundamental issue here. And that fundamental issue is there has to be more buyers than sellers, and you have to onboard people, and you have to bring more people into the ecosystem. I think that the long view of this is that what is going to be the alternative, right? When all the central bank digital currencies come out, when all of these things are centralized, once there are tandem agreements between all these central banks and we have this digital dollar, what is going to happen? Well, we see that Congress is saying, no, we're not going to have any central bank digital currency. It's okay. They don't need to have something like that. You know what they're going to end up doing? They're going to essentially create USDC through their regulation of Circle to ultimately be the de facto CBDC without it being called a CBDC. So when you look out at this future, we have to have an alternative. And so right now, it's hard to see that when you're hurting for money and you're challenged, or you came into crypto because it's just like, hey, I saw people got a 10,000x or whatever it may be, or 1,000x, and you're playing that game. What you're essentially doing is adding energy to essentially a casino. And that's fine. I mean, casinos are fun. But if we're going to build long-term sustainable value, we have to build on something that has a certain ethos. It is animated by a certain nature and character: freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom of privacy, freedom to transact. These are core fundamentals. Then we have to have connectivity. So now imagine a future. And this is what I hear Richard Hart saying without saying it, because he's not on stream. What I hear him saying is, we are building the alternative financial system. It's not all there yet. He talked about a vertically aligned ecosystem. That was the precursor to this alternative financial system. What I'm interested in is, how do we bring real world assets? How do we own it? Not let them own it and us rent from them. How do we own the assets? And so what would the implications be of real world assets like gold actually being the backing for real world asset tokens on the Pulsechain? We're not just letting them do it. Why don't we do it? You're like, well, how do we do that? Well, it's really important that we own the assets. Because here's the cool thing. When it comes to the value of something, let me just explain to you very simply. You create this new token, and this new token's named after you. Call it whatever you want. You then take that token, which you made up out of thin air, and then you take, let's say, in a V2 pair, you pair it with a certain amount of Pulse. Pulse has a market value right now. Well, you take half and you set the price of your token. Well, if no one knows about it, no one cares about it, there's no volume and no transactions. Have you actually created any value? No. But as you start basically having volume and trading happens, essentially you've net effect created money. And what's amazing about that, that's the speculative nature of this. We've abstracted the value from Ethereum. And this is the most brilliant thing. And I want to give a hat tip to Axie's Alive for really helping describe this to me, is the fact that we've essentially, by forking the system state of Ethereum, have in a net effect abstracted the value by essentially gathering up all of that liquidity. Well, that liquidity isn't going to come to bear. It's not going to be as relevant unless we have this, stable coin, like a PDI, for example, pegged at $1. But there's so many pieces in the background that are lining up. I believe what we need to bring to the Pulse chain is we need to bring actual asset-backed tokens, meaning I believe we need to have essentially gold-backed. We need to own the gold that's in the ground. And the beauty of that is, I talked about this the last time I did a stream, was about the fact that the gold mining industry, I've been interested in this for a long time. I've been interested in geology and all sorts of things. Right now, the junior mining industry is incredibly depressed. Just to give you a perspective, it wasn't, but 10 years ago when the junior miners could sell resources that were in the ground. Okay, so to give you a little bit of an education, there are reserves and there are resources, and there's certain types of reserves and there's certain types of resources. Reserves are proven. This is an ore body of gold in the ground, but there's a cost to it, so it's discounted. While resources are measured and then they are potentially inferred, like, hey, we've got this land, we've got this, we do these drill reports, the gold's there, but it's not a reserve yet. That's a value that's in the ground. But let me blow your mind for a second. If you wanted to buy gold assets, real assets in the ground, did you know that the market capitalization of some of these publicly traded junior mining companies who are sitting on assets in the ground in, to the tune of hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of gold and silver and precious metals, have market capitalizations of $1.5 million? I'm going to say that again. If you're paying attention, that should literally knock your socks off. They're publicly traded companies on the Toronto Stock Exchange that are in the junior mining space that control assets in the ground, resources documented, that have market caps of $2 million. If that stock was for sale for $1 million, you could own $1 billion worth of assets. And I'm using that as a generalization, but that's the point, meaning that the value of the gold in the ground, no one values it. And why? And I'm going to tell you why. And this is why it's so big. Back before crypto, remember the Wolf of Wall Street? Yeah, you probably remember the movie. There are some scenes that you can't get out of your mind, I'm sure. But what's interesting is that was the penny stock world. And you remember that Leonardo DiCaprio kind of bright lights, big city, Wall Street, hustle and game. Well, that was the penny stock world. Well, that was the casino of the time. And guess what's happened? Besides the fact that, junior mining stocks have been decimated, all the speculators are in crypto, right? Instead of speculating on penny stocks, on gold mining or junior mining companies, they're in crypto speculating on the next froggy doggy coin. That is a really interesting opportunity. And if you know what I'm saying, you know exactly what I'm saying. There are opportunities for us to be able to buy the assets at a very, very inexpensive price and then revalue them. What does that mean when you revalue them? It means that you bring them in at a fair market value and you tokenize them on the Pulse chain. Folks, that's called liquidity. I believe the issue that I brought up at the very beginning, the number one issue is, what is it backed by? And so people that I know that are not in crypto are like, hey, what's it backed by? Nothing. And if I get in, how do I get out? I've heard of these rug pulls, and people, because in an automated market maker, they're individuals, peer-to-peer, making the market. Well, what ends up happening is, I think this is the greatest thing, and then somebody pulls the rug. Well, what's pulling the rug but pulling the liquidity? We want to solve this problem. We have real-world assets backing, like gold in the ground, and two, we have locked liquidity. Now, some of you that know what you're doing in crypto going, oh, I don't really like that. Well, why? Because I don't like stability. Folks, the future is stable. The future is going to be where these things are backed, and we're not going to have as much volatility. But a lot of people that like the casino like the volatility. What I'm saying is, I'm looking past this, next bull run. I'm looking and considering others in addition to myself, my kids and my grandkids. I'm looking at them and saying, What does this alternative financial system? Well, if we just let the big boys acquire the assets, they will. They're doing it with farmland and residential housing. Folks, the world is going to be tokenized. That value, though, has a direct impact on the pulse chain, is that we can bring that value into real world asset value into the pulse chain as liquidity and lock it. And what ends up happening is it gives confidence to people outside to go, well, it's backed by gold. And if I get in, I can get out. But that's not very sexy for the people who want to play the casino game. And you know what? You probably don't come to this channel because you want, meme coin promotion. So hopefully, if you have ears to hear, in the description of this video, I have my Telegram. We've formed a group called unlock.global. And if you'd like to be invited into that, you need to send me a DM on Telegram. Okay. It's a group of people who are focused on what would it look like if we owned the assets and we brought that liquidity in? Because there's a lot of benefits to making the market with a significant amount of liquidity. So I would just say this to you. What would the pulse chain look like with an extra $100 million worth of locked liquidity? What would that mean? What would that look like? What would it look like if there was gold-backed tokens, tokenized gold on the pulse chain? Would that be good or bad for our community? What would it mean if we had additional or significant locked liquidity? Well, some people will be like, well, I don't want that stability. Okay. Long term, I think that's how we're going to get the people really to come in, is to have the alternative financial system. Because when this one, the centralized one, breaks, where are people going to go? Where do good people go? Richard Hart has seen this since the very beginning. I've just been paying attention. But it's not the sexy stuff, right? It's like, I guess gold is best. It's best, jet ski, fun watch. But it's something that's inevitable. But we're going to miss out on the opportunity. But the opportunity is sitting right in front of us. We can acquire these assets. We can bring these. We can own them. And so if you own these assets, what does it mean? Well, you get the fees. And I'm going to tell you what the pulse chain needs is a lot more locked liquidity. And it needs real world asset tokenization, because confidence is what it's about. Because at the end of the day, Richard Hart is right. Our made up internet money is better than the government's made up internet money. What is it? It's a shared fiction. What is fiat? By decree. It's an agreement. People understand gold. But at the end of the day, it's a story. The question is, what is our story? A bunch of people that are toxic, hating on each other, like devouring their own? That's a lovely narrative. All kinds of normal people want to join that, right? Think about what we name our products. I won't list any names, but just imagine inappropriate names of tokens. How many can you think of? Well, I can think of several. What are we telling the world? We think it's funny. Oh, young people going, oh, this is great. Let's talk about genitalia. Let's talk about, swear words. Let's talk about all these things. Folks, what you name things matters. And it's funny to you now. It's almost like, getting that tattoo when you're young. It's like, yeah, Batman was the big thing. And you got this big Batman thing. You're like, well, there's probably a point in which Batman isn't as exciting as when you were 16. It's the same thing. And so we're thinking that, yeah, look what we're doing. We're building the next meme coin. We're doing this stuff. But what are we doing? We're ruling out a whole audience of people. I mean, Richard, this is what backfired in some respects on this whole outrage marketing thing, right? Who wants to be a part of something where somebody's talking about their pee-pee all the time? He understood that. It's humble Richard now. But I see through that and understand that we're going to have to actually bring reasonable adult. We don't need distractions. We need substance. And I think that we have it at its core, a fundamental vertically aligned ecosystem that is an alternative financial system. It's set up to be that. Why don't we lean into it? We together are building the alternative financial system. I haven't gotten into the chat. Let's say hello to you. Taryn, what's up? Thanks for being here, man. Thanks for saying hello and coming back. 125 people here. Thank you so much for joining. on this midday, June 4th. Francis Powell, hello. Mr. Rock Jockey, what's up? Timothy Harris, have a blessed day. Cryptomance PLS, good morning to you. Ego Foundation, hello. Good to see you, buddy. Again, Bright Light 57 Crypto. Yvonne is here. DJ Bomber is here. Rich Liberation. Hex Rockstar, DCR, Disclosure Crypto. Hex Softball. What's up? Quinn. Oh my goodness. We got all these dudes. And then we've got Quinn. You know what? I appreciate you being here. You brighten it all up with the hearts. Larry, what's going on? Mr. Rock Jockey. Tea Time. Dan McMillan, what's up? Replay, be well to you. People are desperate. Is that what you're saying? Desperate? Yeah. They'd rather make some buck fast instead of thinking about the bigger picture. And I mean, in some respects, I don't blame them, right? No one wants to, trip over $1 to pick up a dime. And I understand there's opportunities everywhere you go. But you know what's hard for me? It's a conviction that I've had that, I almost feel like, Richard Hart has talked about essentially leverage trading, right? This idea of trading is that you're stealing from the other person on the other side of the computer. Okay. I want to take that a little bit further. I love to play no limit hold'em poker, right? I love it. But what's interesting about poker is you sit down at the table and you put your money down. And the person also, that other person puts their money down. And you're looking at them and you see the money and when I win, I take your money. And when you win, you take my money, right? It's clear what you're getting into. The problem though is with crypto and technology and all this, it's easy to manipulate people and to take the noobs. I was a noob once, right? Take the noobs and tell them a story, right? Oh, look, this is the next thing. You're going to get in on this next thing. But what have people done? They've colluded behind the scenes with others. And they said, we're going to launch this thing. They're in the know. And it's essentially, it's insider trading type of stuff, which is totally legal to do in crypto. And so that's where the scams and that's where all of this stuff is, because you're being manipulated. But it's for a group of people that essentially have some resources for liquidity that create tokens and essentially, rinse and repeat this concept. Put up a website, get some cool meme. They, put up a white paper, do some tokenomics and, put some liquidity up and tell their buddies, hey, at this minute, we're going to buy. And that's not even considering the sniper bots. And I think what we think is that's where value is being created. And it's not where value is being created. What's actually happening is you're just abstracting the distance between you and the guy you're stealing from. And so, it was so classic. I was really caught up in the whole Hex 10,000X thing. I put in $600. It turned into 15,000. I bought my daughter a car and I was like, this is awesome. And so Hex Rockstar, you're absolutely right. I was just like seeing this going, really? You can turn $600 into 15,000? Let's go. Let's do it again. But what I didn't realize is as we went through this bear market is that you realize you start shuffling everything around, right? And if we're not focused on bringing new people in, well, what are the catalysts for bringing new people into an ecosystem? Well, it's got to be more fundamental than just look at my shiny object. Now, sometimes that works. Look at Solana. Solana did that with the meme tokens, but this is going to be a phase, and this phase is going to pass, and there's going to be something next because the bull run is going to likely be led by the blue chips, right? We're going to see Bitcoin and Ethereum run, and then we're going to see the altcoins run. The question is what's going to survive? What has the actual staying power? And I believe that as an ecosystem, I think fundamentally we need to differentiate ourselves. Well, how do we differentiate ourselves? Right now, we're differentiating ourselves with toxicity. People love that. That attracts so many people. Be toxic. That's great. And so many people are hurting. I get it, right? There's a lot of people that retired and they have to go back to work, right? That's kind of the latest thing. Well, how do we bring more people in? Well, on one hand, you just kind of have to stick around. If you're building the alternative financial system and you have all of these fundamental infrastructure things, they're going to come. Why? Because there won't be an alternative where there's privacy. There won't be an alternative where you can actually transact without somebody knowing what you're doing. And I think that's really valuable. And I think that Richard is banking upon privacy and freedom of speech and movement and transaction. That those things are fundamental. It's pretty exciting that we've got Coast is back with a fiat on ramp and off ramp. That's one of the fundamental things that are needed. Long term, we won't need to get off to fiat. Yes, I said get off the fiat. Hex Rockstar, thanks for your comment. Appreciate that. Tea Time, what's up? Doing well? Doing well. Just fighting the good fight, which is thinking about ways and things that we can do that fundamentally improve the pulse chain. This is our product. Well, what is the differentiator of this product, if not alternative, separate, functioning separately? The beauty of this is we're leaning into the fundamental, what would it be called? Richard Hart's personality of advocacy, bravado, intellect, but also hubris. Richard Hart isn't going to partner with MasterCard and Visa, no matter how much you think that's a good idea. And that's what I actually appreciate about him, is that I'm pretty sure that he's not going to make the pulse chain OFAC compliant. Folks, we've got ourselves the building blocks of the alternative financial system, and it will be extremely relevant when the centralized one fails. Babylon burns in an hour. We're like, oh my goodness, what happened? Yeah, kind of like Berkshire Hathaway dropping 85%. I got really disappointed that very few people promoted the Minek challenge. Interesting. The question is, I think the jury's still out. How will that impact things? It's kind of like, I wish more people would have done stuff with the NASCAR event. How'd that turn out, right? How many things have people done? I think it's good for folks, right, to have, but the question is, okay, so now we've got folks that are going to be in at dinner, right? They're going to be smoking cigars, talking. Well, those connections are going to be great, right? Gary Woods, who won that got the first place in the lightweight category. He was somebody who is, right, he's a networking coach. This is in his DNA. This is what he does. Now, will that benefit the pulse chain? Maybe, in an ancillary way. Is that the primary purpose? Well, I would hope that Gary's concern is actually for himself first and then for others. But I think it's a good narrative that, hey, we might get some benefit by having some big players get some eyeballs. It's marketing. It's really good marketing. The good news is, whether it got promoted or not, the fact of the matter is, two guys from our community, Rags and Gary, are going to be front and center. So let's just hope that it turns into some value. It can't hurt. I'll tell you that. It can't hurt at all. Shen, what's going on? Quinn with the love. People will FOMO into Pulse Chain. Well, they have to have a reason to FOMO into Pulse Chain. Obviously, one of those would be, well, it can't go much lower. I mean, it can, but, if the number goes up and the green candles are there, but there's a lot of competition out there, folks. Right now, the issue of freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom of transaction, freedom of privacy isn't red hot. Why? Because, everybody kind of thinks that it's all decentralized, and it's not. It's going to have to get much worse on the centralized side to highlight the decentralized nature of the pulse chain. We're seeing this ahead of time, and that's kind of the key, knowing about things early. So I just want to make that point to you. I'm sharing with you the perspective that I have. This is an alternative financial system, not an alternative chain. You got to stop thinking about it. No, we need to be playing the game the way the game is played. That's why we need to own the assets, in my opinion. And that's why I said earlier, if you're interested in talking about these type of things and understand what I'm saying, that we need to own the assets. Well, you can pick them up for real cheap. That's what BlackRock's doing. Why aren't we doing that? And I know there are people who have the resources. Why don't we do that? We bring in that resource. Think about this. If you can pick up resources in the ground for about $7.50 an ounce, and you can revalue those at 100, and that's about what a measured resource is valued at, fair market value, you can literally create money with backing in gold. There's a way to do it. That's what I'm focused on. And it's like, that's what we need. We need backing with real world assets, and we need locked liquidity, because the people who really have, that really have an understanding, they're not in this thing. Why? Because there's not enough liquidity, right? And it's not backed by anything. And what's the message we're telling them? Toxic competition between people. There's no unity. There are some benefits of centralization. And I think part of the issue is Richard Hart was such a good communicator and consistent in those early days, that because the lack of communication, which I understand, it's actually forcing us to own it. And in a strange sort of way, that's what made Hex work. This idea of having something that is truly immutable on the blockchain. And I want you to understand how I see it. When I first got into this channel and created it, I was promoting Hex, and I said, look what Richard Hart did to build this community. And a number of people said, Richard Hart didn't build this community. This community was built by a small group of people who understood how to build community because they had done it before. These are people like RG3, Crypto Coffee, Kinetics, Briz was in the original one. There was a number, Dollar Cost Crypto. There's a number of people. Maddie obviously came into that. There was all these people at the very beginning who understood this is a great product. It's ultimately decentralized money. Be your own bank. And if it wasn't for those people taking ownership in it and investing in it, there was no centralized VC firm giving out money, buying ads, even though I did see an ad on late night TV. Folks, the beauty of that is, in a way, that's what's happening right now. Smart people are looking at this and going, okay, we're taking ownership in this. And they're building, right? Great people building great products, like guys like Brother KG building internet money and the wallets and all those things, core infrastructure. Folks, I hope you see what's going on. I'm more bullish than I ever. Am I bullish on the price in the short term of Pulse or PulseX? Maybe in about 5 days when the FOMC meeting comes and maybe they lower interest rates by 0.75 of a point, that could actually stimulate some things. Pay attention to that. I don't know if they will. I know there's a lot of people in pain in a lot of places. The biggest lobbying group in the United States, which is the Association of Realtors, is really unhappy because there's no inventory, because the interest rates are so high. And we've got an election coming up, and the people that control things want Biden to win again. Clearly, is that not obvious with how they're using the legal system? So what do they want? Do you think Jerome Powell is going to go along with Biden's team and all this? Yeah, of course they are. Why? Because they want to preserve their power. So do I think they'll lower rates? Maybe. Would that be a stimulant for altcoin summer? Maybe. I posted something. It was a clip from Raoul Pal, and it was called The Banana Zone. And he took the charts and he broke the chart out by post-halvening every single cycle. So this would be the fourth cycle. And it showed basically almost the identical thing happened the first, second, third. And here we are at the fourth, and it shows basically we're getting really close to the banana zone. And the banana zone is where I got into crypto. It's like the number went up and continued to go up and up and up and up. But, if you think about it, that's during this quantitative easing time of easy money. I think any chance or any catalyst that we have that can stimulate people, obviously reduction in interest rates is really important. The ETFs and that getting into play for Ethereum, I think plays into it. But I feel like unless the interest rates are this high, we're going to have a challenge to have a massive bull run. But there's a meeting coming up in 5 days? So we will see. But folks, this is an opportunity when things are low to buy low and sell high. So if you're interested in knowing more about real world asset tokenization, how we bring that, how we own the assets. And that's the cool thing. Imagine you buy into some meme coin and it goes to zero. What are you holding? Nothing. Well, if you buy those assets when they're absolutely deeply discounted. If your tokens go to zero and go away, you still have the asset. I mean, that's why a lot of people that did really well in speculative assets are getting into real estate. Why? They want something that they know people need. It's called real value goods and services. It's like housing, basic housing. Yeah, makes sense. You know, it's funny is like we forget these things when we get into FOMO land when everything's going up into the right. Just people, it's a frenzy. The original Hex swimmer, get Trump or Biden to fly the $7 billion handouts again. That will get people in. Yeah. Hand it out. Free money. Invisible Cloak Productions. BTC 90K in 2 weeks. XRP about to go. WBTC 90X cheapest BTC on the planet. Yeah. You know, it's interesting. If you follow Wrapped Bitcoin on the Pulsechain, somebody, I'm not sure who, somebody in the Pulsechain has 44,000 wrapped Bitcoin. They got forked over. That means they've got 44,000 wrapped Bitcoin on Ethereum. Pretty interesting. Green candles. Ramon Carrillo. What's up, fam? Late arrival. Sam Kemp. Good to see you alive for the first time. All in. RWA. Hex Pulse Stables. You got it. You can see Richard Hart building liquidity right now. Well, absolutely. Well, you saw, I think, additional pairs with WBTC. That's one example that I saw out there. But, you know, if you pay attention to what Axis was talking about and you think about the pegging, you know, what did he say? Wrapped ETH is tracking the price of Pulse. Well, why? Because Pulse is ETH. And that means that any of these fork tokens, if you really think about it, none of these fork tokens should have any value, but they do. What does that mean? What does it mean that PDI has a value at all, or Wrapped BTC has a value at all, or any of the fork stables have any value at all? That means we're creating money. That means that literally we're borrowing that liquidity, or not really borrowing it, but we're leveraging it, right? We're abstracting it into the Pulse chain. And that's the benefit that I didn't see at the beginning of the potential of what does it mean when, you know, this version that's been forked is at, you know, parity. And it really doesn't even have to be at parity. The amazing thing is that it has any value at all. But that's the power of agreement. What gives this stuff value? It's the interest of people. We are animating this tool, this Pulse chain thing that the brilliance of Richard Hart, the copy of the system, said has given us. It's given us access to liquidity. You watch, if PDI does peg, I mean, hold on to your hats. And then, you know, you think about just the turmoil. I mean, I haven't talked about politics. I mean, this thing that's going on with Trump, I mean, whether you're a Trump fan or not, I mean, if they can go after a billionaire like him who's a former president, go after anybody. And then make stuff up. They can't even identify what the felonies are. Whatever you agree with, the fact of the matter is, folks, this thing is failing around us. And in the opposition will do anything. There is literally no bridge too far, right? They will do it. Always overplay their hand. And the question is, where do good people go? Where will you have privacy and freedom of speech and freedom of movement and freedom to transact? Where are you going to do that? And right now you're like, I just like my dick with butt. Really? That's what people are doing. I mean, just think about those words out of my mouth, which you would normally not hear. Think about that. That's what people are focused on. Man, my thing. You know, you take the good, you take the bad. That's how it works. But hopefully there's a little bit of sense coming out of all this stuff because the genius behind the scenes, Richard's made it pretty clear. He's telegraphing these things. And I think what's great is it gives us an opportunity to show some leadership. And so what are people like Gary Woods and Brandon from Rags to Riches doing? They're showing leadership. What are people like Brother KG and folks that go to Consensus doing? They're showing leadership. We need people who are fundamentally understanding what is at stake here, that the long term is, if we don't build the alternative financial system, there won't be one. And to me, if we're going to have this future of abundance, it's going to be where we have, you know, we have the freedom to choose. I mean, that's kind of the beauty of like leaving, what is the idea of America, right? You're under this tyrannical rule, the centralization of power, and you want to get out from under it. It's no longer the consent of the governed. Get me started on that. Die Hard with a Vengeance. I love that. That's a nice name. Crypto Khalil, how much do you think the presidency plays a role in the future of real DeFi? That's a really good question. I mean, I think if you have a pro crypto president, you have a pro crypto, control of Congress, you're going to have proper, appropriate, sensible regulatory. I mean, there needs to be basic regulatory stuff. But if you had somebody, I mean, Trump said, what would it look like if there were incentives to bring your crypto company to the United States or to Texas? I think there's a lot of good things there because there's a lot of value going to be created. I mean, my dream in all of this is that Texas would be independent and we would have, we'd have a country literally embracing DeFi. Imagine this future. Imagine a future rather than El Salvador taking BTC and making it legal tender, that you had a country who said, you know what, we're going to do something no one else has done before. And this is what I would do. I'd take that little country or a big country and I say, we're going to do like a sacrifice, right? So we're going to do essentially this phase where you can invest in the people, not in the government, not in the systems, not in the bureaucracy. You can invest in the people yourselves. And what you end up doing is you put this money in, and that's where the airdrop comes of the origin of this token. But that token is an immutable contract on the blockchain and essentially has a trustless yield component. And imagine a future where it was actually endorsed and became legal tender alongside of your typical fiat. And you literally said to people, all right, you can either lock this up or you can spend it. It's going to be legal tender here, just like they did with BTC. Imagine having trustless yield in an immutable contract that's endorsed by your jurisdiction, which would be your country. And then imagine you come to pay your taxes and your yield on your interest from that immutable contract pays that, right? There's a flip, right? It's upside down. We could flip this into being abundance because if you think about it, what should happen in the economy is as things get more efficient, they become cheaper. Seems like they're getting more expensive. Crypto Compassion. Hey, y'all. Richard Hart was never going to leave Pulse success solely on the community. Was never gonna. Well, I think, history hasn't been written yet. You know what's funny is Richard Hart isn't far. He's paying attention to all this stuff. I don't know if you know that. I pay attention to Richard on Twitter. He's very well aware of things. But you know what he's smart enough to know? He's smart enough to know the cycles. How many times did he tell us, hey, by the way, once I call the top, it's at least 3.5 years. That was the nature and is the nature of it. And everybody wants it to go up. You can't will it to go up. But it does. I mean, it stays down and then it has to have a catalytic event and that catalytic event happens and it's time to go. I think he probably thought that this Bitcoin ETF and then breaking all-time highs on Ethereum was the key when he bought at 4,000. But the fact that he moved that stuff, I mean, that in and of itself, 150,000 Ethereum, right? And people criticize him. I'm like, dude, you try this stuff out. You try managing all of this kind of resource. But you know what? It's not the will of one man. He can't just make the market. No, he's probably made some tops and bottoms. But at the end of the day, you need the prevailing wind to shift. And as long as interest rates are high, in my opinion, it's not going to shift. And so we wait. But boy, I'll tell you what. Imagine this. To me, this is one of the greatest things that could happen. And it's related to your comment of the presidency or politics. Richard Hart is making the case that when you write to the blockchain, it's your free speech. And if you look at kind of precedent, like let's say you write a book, you own that book. Let's say you write code, you own that code. Now you could license that code, or the person that buys you as a coder could say, no, this is mine, right? But they have to do that ahead of time. When you create something, you have ownership over that, right? The copyright, if you will, to it. That is that's the ownership in that asset or whatever it is that you created, right? And you could have evidence whether you put the little copyright symbol on it or not. It shows ownership. And when you think about what Richard Hart is doing, what is he doing in this in this Pulsechain ecosystem. It's a function of the cycle and timing. And he bragged so much about calling the top. Well, he called the top. That should be to the people that know what they're doing. And I've learned this in that process is the whales understand, well, we're not going to have this kind of frenzy until it starts again. And that's going to be probably 3.5 years from now. Is it unfortunate? Did we have kind of expectations? Did I think things were going to pump like crazy because we created this copy of the Pulsechain? Yeah. Did I think it was going to come out earlier than it did? Yes. You know who was right? You know who needs some credit for being right? Is Alexander Lorenzo. Remember that guy when he came in and we did some interviews with him and he talked to Richard and everything? He's like, dude, I wouldn't do any of this stuff with the Pulsechain until the next bull run. And everybody's like, no, we shouldn't do that. We need to launch now. Well, even though it took 2 years, here we are waiting. I mean, he was right. And I think that the people that have the experience in crypto know that these cycles are cycles. But the future ultimately is that it would become more stable. And when you see all these retailers and all these people move into the ecosystem, and that's what we want, it creates more stability. Well, then they basically, jurisdictions say, all right, we're making this legal tender, or we're going to accept these type of things, or there's going to be these tandem agreements between central bank digital currencies. I think that's where at first it seems like, yay, all this money's coming into the ecosystem. And then there's the like, it's kind of like with COVID, right? It was like, oh, yay, okay, we're gonna flatten the curve in 2 weeks, and then you realize, wow, everybody's taking advantage of the fact that they can control you for essentially selfish gain. And then you go, well, this really isn't very good, and then you push back. I think the same thing is going to happen. Everybody's going to be like, oh, look at all this wonderful centralization of crypto. Oh, yeah. And then people start manipulating and using that because they've got power and control over others. And they're like, we need an alternative. So I think the real value may not happen in this cycle. I mean, we'll have a bull run, but it probably won't be what you expect it to be. But the long term is if we can build this alternative financial system and it actually can be properly decentralized and stable and robust, we're giving a future to the entire world because it'll be an alternative place. I mean, imagine this. Imagine they shut down your ISP or whatever, and your internet connectivity won't let you connect to certain blockchains, your wallet, or anything like that. You'd have to find another internet provider. Well, who is that internet provider? I mean, it might only be Starlink in the future. I could easily see a scenario in which all the, globalist type of people say, no, we need to cut people off from accessing these things. You're like, well, we got to find a place to have connectivity where we can actually access the Pulsechain. I mean, that's what Richard has seen ahead of time. That's why he did the IPFS stuff, so that you can run things locally. Folks, he's so far ahead. He's just so far ahead of you and me. I see it. I asked Richard Hart why he was shilling ETH on one of his tweets. He immediately blocked me. I don't know what that's about. I don't know what to think about that either. To say that he was shilling ETH, I think what I've heard from Richard about ETH, and I may be wrong, but what I've seen in the past is that, he was a BTC maxi, and then it's like, hey, Ethereum, and then now we have a copy of Ethereum, and it's like probably blocked you because he's like, you don't understand what I'm doing, right? And like dumb. Not that you are dumb, but you get what I'm saying. Rat food. But yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. I wouldn't worry about it a single bit. Leadership is really, really important. But what I love about it's leadership within a decentralized system. There's so much more hanging on all of these little pieces of what people are building. Some great builders, some great thoughtful people who aren't trying to take advantage of you, who are actually trying to help themselves, but also help you in the process. Legitimate people building legitimate infrastructure that can be utilized by you to have the ability to transact. Magnus, hey folks, late for this one. It's all right. Hexclan, what's going on? The shakeout continues. All the yield generated by the SAC funds. Richard Hart knew he needed a bag big enough to create the IMP, hence the sacrifice. I think what's really interesting about the sacrifice money is the fact that it's still there, and that the yield on that is being generated, I think, through Spark. And then this whole thing with the MakerDAO contract being altered at the very beginning, and then potentially the Maker developers, working with Richard and his devs. Dude, that to me is one of the coolest things. If that's true, what it means for the future when things get turned back on with the Maker contract and that PDI thing. I mean, it's all speculation right now, but what does it mean once it actually happens? If we have what I would consider to be a truly significantly backed, quote unquote, kind of algorithmic stablecoin. It's not really. I mean, it's backed by crypto, but a lot of that value has been brought over from Ethereum, and it's really thick. I mean, how cool would that be? We got ourselves our own stablecoin, and it's, with significant liquidity. There are other stablecoins, so I don't want you to think that I don't recognize, USDL and some of these other stablecoin tokens. But as far as something that is universal with really, really thick liquidity, I think that's, if in fact we've got it right, that's PDI. The infinite money printer proclaiming flames. Dude, proclaiming flames ministry. The question is, do you have a van that has flames on the side of it? The best ministries have flames on the side of their vans. You ever see that? Right? I remember being a kid and like the really charismatic people would have like flames on their van. Super awesome. Proclaiming the flames. Does the SAC address still hold SDAI? That's a really good question. I think there's a certain amount of it. I want to say 150 million. Is that right? No, 150,000 ETH was bought with SAC funds at $4,000 on the Ethereum side. I do know that there are resources generating yield in Spark protocol, DeFi protocol for yield. But what's so cool is, use that money, that resource to generate constant buy pressure, right? Because what do you need? You need something that's catalytic. Richard Hart doesn't have enough money in the SAC funds to just, because if you really think about it, it would be just saying, all right, everybody wants to dump, give me my money back. And so assume that it gets to SAC rate and the liquidity is there. The whole point of this isn't that you got the money back that you put in 3 years ago. It's really that you experience this number go up. But the shaking out, it's actually really, really beneficial, because if you can get these people out at the bottom, and it's really bottom, anyone that's selling right now, they're either desperate and they need money because they over leverage themselves, or they're just stupid and they just want to chase something else. It is what it is. But the beauty of it is the less people that you have to dump on you, when things start moving, the more market buying there is. Him not actually selling the SAC money helps him legally. Didn't say you couldn't earn yield on it. There you go. That's a good point. Richard Hart created the copies. Now he's created the value for them all. It's incredible. And then there are people within our community who are building tools that do very similar things. I keep giving credit to Axie's Alive, but this whole SolidX index stuff, right? With the compound V2, by being able to create these, I think it's 8 tokens in an index, and all of these, plays with liquidity and protecting price and all that. And when I talked to Axie's last time on stream, he's like, yeah, it's like we learned what Richard was doing 3 years ago. I love that, dude. I just love it that Richard's that far ahead. I kind of wish I could delete the whole outrage marketing thing, because, the times I got a chance to talk to Richard when he was in a safe place and wasn't being attacked by dum-dums, the guy was charming. I always tell this story. I'm kind of just rambling now, but I remember watching Richard. He drove around Europe in a Ferrari. And what was so cool is he would do these meetups, and they were classic. If you ever get a chance to go back and watch them, it's amazing. That's where we met Sticker Guy for the first time. But it was really cool to see him. And I remember one time there was somebody was holding live stream, like a phone or something, and there was a hot mic in the back, and Richard and all these people were kind of all over Richard and everything. And there was a young guy who was like, hey, can I have a selfie? Can I have a selfie? Can I have a selfie? And you didn't see Richard, but you heard him on the hot mic say, "Hey, dude, it's going to be okay. We'll get one outside." And the way in which he spoke to that kid who was like, treating him like a celebrity, and the way that he handled, I was like, that's what I needed to know. It's the things the way that people get treated when they're not getting some benefit from it. He was very reassuring to this young man that, hey, you're going to get one, dude. Just give it a second. It wasn't rude to him at all. And he had that riz, as my son would say. He got the riz. What's up, Heartbeat? Been a while. What's up, AT? Liberty or Death. Good afternoon, Matt. Just started the video, so I'm behind. Love the title. God bless you. You as well. Yo, Mackie. Great stream. Got to run and see the replay. Absolutely. Share it out. Like, subscribe, do those type of things. We're going to be doing this. We're going to be talking a lot about this topic in the future. So last thing I'll say, and this is really the plug. If you're interested in being a part of this conversation in community with a group of people who want to see ways in which we can buy real world assets, bring those into the Pulse chain, revalue them, and bring in lock liquidity, a significant amount of lock liquidity into the Pulse chain, you need to be a part of the conversation, because that is the opportunity that we have in front of ourselves. And in my opinion, that's what is fundamentally needed. Because when I talk to people who've got real money who are not in crypto, they say, what's it backed by? And if I get in, can I get out? And I don't have a good answer for those two things. It's backed by nothing, and you could get rug pulled. Now, that's overgeneralization. But if we're going to address some of these issues, let's back it by something real, which creates stability, and let's get lock liquidity. Folks, thanks for joining in the Pulse today. My name is Matt. This is Crypto Heartbeat. And do not mess with Texas. Take care, everybody.